This is William Regal with Chicago Bourbon. I'm sitting here today with Martin Duffy, U.S. brand ambassador for Glencairn Crystal and co-founder of the Chicago Indie Spirits Expo. We're on WhistlePig Farm, sitting down with Raj Bhakta to learn more about the WhistlePig brand. How you doing, Raj?
Great. I'm great. Wonderful.
Thank you for having us out here.
Welcome. Welcome to the farm, gentlemen. It's a lovely morning.
To be here.
So we are on the WhistlePig Farm in Shoreham, Vermont. And Raj, how did you end up on a farm in Vermont?
It was a very windy road. The most immediate impact points before landing here was a race for U.S. Congress, in which I did not prevail. But I learned timing.
Okay.
And when I arrived on the farm here, this was back in 2007. So I lost the race in 2006, spent a little time in India. Figured it was time to sort of settle down in life and wait for God to talk to me about what I should do next, because I didn't have a clue. Bought a 500-acre farm and sort of stared at the seasons changing, expecting a voice from the heavens to open up and reveal to me what I should do next. That didn't happen. No revelations really come from the Almighty. The economy tanks. I need to figure out a way to make the farm productive. I triangulated a couple of loves, one for whiskey, another for the United States of America. And I noticed in thinking through this matrix that there was no great luxury American whiskey brand. We didn't have, a Macallan. It was sort of wide open space. The only thing was sort of pappy, but it's sort of comically small. Mm-hmm. And sort of saw rye as the vehicle, the right grain to do luxury American whiskey with. On the one hand, on the other hand, thought that the whiskey business could benefit from some of the elements of wine business and the concept of terroir, right?
Sure.
What does this farm taste like, right? What does the grain that it's grown here taste like? What does it happen if we use our own oak trees? So it's a combination of consolidate great old whiskey supplies globally, right? Put it under the WhistlePig label, and then on the other hand, develop the farm as the ultimate craft, to use that term broadly, or specifically in this case, whiskey.
Okay. And you mentioned bringing in some older whiskey to start with. Where did you get that?
So it's interesting. I was sitting up in the house sometime in late 2009, and I didn't know much about the whiskey business. I knew it from the consumption side, right? But I didn't know it from the other side, the production side.
Okay.
And so I was calling around, actually looking at building a distillery first. But the economics of building a distillery and waiting, if you're going to be serious about the whiskey business, you need years and years, right? Otherwise, you're putting out 2-year-old whiskey, and it could be fantastic 2-year-old whiskey, but it's 2-year-old whiskey, right? Not worth a lot of money, is what I'm saying. Nor worthy of a great brand. And I almost happenstantially got on the telephone with a guy named Dave Pickerel, right, who had just left Maker's Mark. And he had this great old stash of rye that he was trying to bring to America, but he couldn't convince any of the big players, particularly the Kentucky boys, that you could take that this was great whiskey. Forget the fact that it was from Canada. They got fixated on the Canadian side.
Okay.
And I mused to him almost on the telephone, that I said, wouldn't it be great if we could start with some 10-year-old rye whiskey? Wouldn't that just be great? And he goes, well, it just so happens that I found the best old rye supply that I've ever tasted in my life. And I said, well, that's great. What's the problem? And he's like, well, it's from Canada. I'm like, what's the problem with Canada? Who's got a problem with Canada? Anyway, so we brought it down, and I bottled it in 2 picnic tables with a guy who sold me this old Cadillac behind you,
Okay.
and 4 Middlebury College students that I paid in kind.
But now the whiskey was initially labeled as a Vermont whiskey, but it did say
No, it was actually, it's an interesting piece of the company's history. In the beginning, we had it labeled as imported from Canada.
right on the back.
On the back. Then the TTB said that since it's being finished for more than 2 years in America, it's now an American product. It got its citizenship. Then they changed their mind again and said, no, it should be imported from Canada. But there was a bit of a the discussion, let's just say, among certain people in the business, that, you know, well, really this is Canadian whiskey that they're leading people to believe is from Vermont, right? But I've always been very candid that the whiskey came from Canada, but this is an American company. It's a Vermont farm-based American company. And so it's sort of like, if you ask me where I'm from, you know, where do I start? I'm from Vermont, or am I from Philadelphia where I was born? Am I from India and Ireland? Or,
Yeah.
you know, so, you know, we were always happy to discuss in detail the origins of whatever we put out. But, you know, if you're sitting there and somebody asks the question, where's this from? Say it's from our farm in Vermont. That's where it's from.
Sure.
But you did. I mean, there was a lot of grief out there, especially among whiskey writers. A lot of folks because, and it was happening at a very bad time when transparency was really. I mean, there was a rampant fever for it.
There was.
People were just. I mean, you had the Templeton thing, and
Yep.
a number of other whiskeys were getting a finger shaken at them. Smooth Ambler was another one.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
And how did that affect you? I mean, did it bother you at the time? Or
It bothered me. It bothered me.
Yeah.
I mean, it bothered me because it's sort of like it's like my baby, right? The brand is my baby, and you had these people, you know, forgive me, I think a lot of them like lived in their mother's basements and, you know, were Monday night quarterbacking all this sort of stuff and getting on their high horse when in fact we were very happy to talk about where the whiskey came from, and in fact I sincerely believe it's the best f***ing whiskey in the world. So, you know, it bugged me. But I've learned to grow, let's say, more philosophical about things.
So we've talked about, kind of touched on a few challenges as you were starting WhistlePig. Is there anything that really sticks out in your mind, any challenge that you faced starting the brand that was a turning point that really solidified your resolve and drove the brand forward?
You know, it's a really good question. And I think they probably had 1,000 points, you know, when I was walking down the hill, and what really fueled it. Well, personally, I wanted to succeed, right? But I also deeply wanted to succeed in creating, you know, it's very ambitious, but in creating America's ultimate craft whiskey and America's ultimate whiskey brand on the other, right? At the high end of the range. And so there was a bit of a mission, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't just about a whiskey company. It wasn't just about the whiskey in the bottle. It was a much broader, I'd say, patriotic, truly, you know, concept behind it. We knew that we had great whiskey. We knew that what we were doing was legit. Mm-hmm. We knew that we weren't just repackaging stuff, that there was a deeper, broader vision, you know, behind the brand. And look, you know, I hate to say it's been easy. It hasn't been easy. There's definitely been the challenges, but things lined up well. You know, we came with a magical name, with a great package, with great old rye whiskey at the right time, and it's always been a question of trying to control growth, right, and not grow too quickly. So we've always been trying to ride the horse and think about, what does this brand look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 10 years, right? How do we make our lives easier 2 years from now so we can sit on the beach if we wanted to, because the brand is just that strong.
Sure.
And that's why we aged and we allowed, you know, we kept those original 10-year stocks, 9-year stocks, to do a 12, to do a 15-year. We have an 18-year coming out this year. These are unheard of age statements in the American whiskey world. largely unheard of.
So following up on that, you know, it's the brand reps or the bourbon stewards,
Yeah.
as you call them, have the ones that I've met have always struck me as being passionate about the brand and very engaging, drawing people in. Do you feel that that's a critical asset to WhistlePig?
Absolutely. That was my the building of the best sales force we possibly could. And really, what is a sales force, right? It's like being able to communicate about the whiskey and about the brand. And so, unique in the business, you'll know this, is we had you know, they lived on the farm for, in some cases, a couple of years, and some at least a couple of months, so that they, you know, would scrape a barn to be repainted, shovel pig shit, while also learning about whiskey and really get the dirt under their fingernails of the DNA of the brand.
Okay.
And it's actually stuff like that too. I mean, it's actually, sometimes it's the non-whiskey aspects of a brand. You know, working around a distillery and learning a little bit of the ins and outs and a little bit of the history just in the surrounding. I mean, when you go visit a distillery anywhere in the world, that's what a lot of times grabs consumers. I mean, they'll be drinking the whiskey, but it adds character to the whiskey.
That's
the
right.
Story does.
That's right. And ultimately, in this business, right, in the whiskey business, it's not just about the whiskey, right? There's a lot of great whiskey out there. What's the story?
Yeah,
What's the
story's
brand?
huge.
What does the brand represent? What's the animating force of the brand, right? That we have the best old rye whiskey in the world, I think, is pretty apparent at this time to many, at the very least. But that there's a deeper reason for our existence is you know, that there's real, you know, the idea of taking what was once fallow farmland and turning it into extremely productive use and a long-term vision. Because think of the faith that you have to have. You have to buy the farm, you have to lay down the whiskey, you have to hold on to it for years. Right. And the act of not selling your whiskey at 5 years old or 8 years old or 10 and letting it age to 15 and 18, that takes a lot of discipline.
And the financial investment, I mean, just a still alone. You have a still from Vendôme. I mean, those stills can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000, depending upon the size and the design.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone is a huge investment.
We'll put it this way: we spent a lot more than that, because we took it and put it into an old, repurposed barn.
Right.
So if you're looking to do things efficiently, you don't adaptively reuse 150, 200-year-old barn. So yeah, your point is correct.
And speaking of which, I mean, you're going to expand production at some point.
Yeah.
I would assume as demand, you know, increases. I mean, would you bring on more stills, larger stills, maybe even expand the barn?
I think the first step will be in basically just adding one more still in there, and probably having another fermentation, you know, facility close by. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I think the next step is another still.
Speaking of growing and expanding, you look at companies like Angel's Envy, Old Scout, who have been acquired by larger corporations. What's your feeling on that?
You know, look, the one thing I also learned in politics is you never say never, right? I can tell you that this brand was not built. This I can say for certain. 90% of the entrepreneurs in this business have an idea that they want to build it up to a certain level and flip it. That never has been the thinking in WhistlePig. At the same time, in order to acquire all those deep aged reserves, you know, which guzzled tens of millions of dollars in capital, I needed to bring in investors. Those investors, you know, one way or the other need to get a return. Yeah. So that is going to be determined, right? Okay. If you're familiar with the brand, you might, you know, recall there's a bit of a spat
Yes.
last year, and
An internal family
Yeah.
quarrel.
yes,
Family
yes, an earnest
quotes.
dialogue.
Yeah. And was all that was resolved?
Resolved.
All resolved.
Resolved.
That's great.
It was resolved at the end of last year, after burning some money with lawyers.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Lawyers.
No fireworks display even. Fireworks is a much better way to spend money.
At least you get something out of it.
Boom.
You get a little
Bang.
entertainment.
Sazzle. Boom. You know.
Now, if you could tie some fireworks to a lawyer and set it off, that would be a 1-2 punch.
That would be a very good use for many lawyers.
So we were talking to your head of operations, Andy, yesterday, and we asked him his take, and I'm interested in getting yours. What were your expectations going into the San Francisco World Spirits competition?
0. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know we had entered.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So it was what you call complete and pure serendipity. That I saw an article that we had won best whiskey in the world, of all the world.
Right.
You know, and I was like, what? I didn't even know we were in the competition. This is great. Woo!
Where's the medal? Is it hanging up over the master bedroom?
You know, I don't know, but I assure that in my mind there are lines and lines of medals. Self-given.
Medals. You're like a Korean general.
Yeah.
You just have all these medals going down.
Just the buckling under the weight of it all.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of WhistlePig? Do you see yourself getting into any other spirits? What do you
You know,
envision?
look, I think that the spirits world, dominated as it has been by a relatively small handful of companies, is ripe with all sorts of opportunity for a bright, ambitious farmer entrepreneur like myself, who also loves and who knows the product. See, people. The thing about WhistlePig, and the thing is, I spent the majority of my life on the other side of the bar, on the consumer side, loving, you know, the tale and the romance of great Scotch brands, right? And so I come at the business from a slightly more consumer-minded outlook, and not just that of a marketeer, which is probably 98% of the way, you know, or at least 98% of the volume in the business is dominated by big companies, 95, whatever, globally. And they're like, frankly, fattened calves sitting on steaks, as far as I can tell.
So was Scotch your first love?
Scotch was my first love. Then it became bourbon. Then I went to Isla, like Lefroy, Lagavulin, went crazy for those for a while. Just loved it. And then now I can't stand that smokiness for some reason. It's weird. Maybe I'll probably, you know, your taste buds change, right? Taste buds change.
Sure.
What you liked 10 years ago, you know, maybe you ate too many jalapenos and you burnt those taste buds or whatever. The tastes evolve, but I see, look, in spirits, you know this, your viewers know this, but you shouldn't spend money on clear spirits. I mean, you can spend a little bit, but don't spend money, because the value in spirits is the investment in time and capital it takes to leave, whether it's whiskey, brandy, you know, rum, you name it. It's time. Buy age statements. I mean, overall, there are plenty of great non-age statement products like farm stock, right? And for example, Johnny Walker Black Label, right? It's universal, ubiquitous. It's great whiskey, right? I think they've lost their age statement.
No,
they still have 12.
Black Label still does.
12. Well, Blue Label,
There you go.
you know, no age statement. I'm glad to hear that Johnny Black hasn't lost its 12-year age statement. That would be a crime if I think about it. It's age statements, right? And overall, and you know, as I say that, we've just launched a product called Farm Stock, which has no age statement, but there's an amazing story, and it's amazing whiskey. I'm drinking it right now. in and of itself. And that's the story of triple terroir, right? Our grain, our water, our wood. So while not universal, the age statement, ethos, it's a good general guidepost. Yeah, good gauge. That's right. It's a good gauge. Yeah.
Now, is it true? We heard a story that you pretended you were a shaman.
A guru, yeah.
Yeah. For about 90 minutes, people told you
their deepest, darkest secrets, man. I was like, I don't really want to hear like this much. Like now I understand why all these shrinks are on meds. This is like a heavy download here. I'm like, tell me, what are your deepest desires? What are your greatest worries? What have you done that you're not proud of? People telling me.
Now this is way more impressive than I expected. The yurt.
Yeah. So I got this as like a present for my wife. And she designed it's like a Moroccan yurt. It's where the WhistlePig peyote parties happen.
So, Raj, you mentioned before having international whiskeys. Do you think it'd be possible to take the WhistlePig name and apply it to distilleries around the world? So WhistlePig Vermont is rye, but would you rule out owning a Scotch distillery or an Irish distillery, and they'd be, basically taking the same name, but applying it to different styles of whiskey? Even Indian whiskey is very hot right now.
I think that it is an astute question. I don't mean to go political, but I see global opportunity with or without the WhistlePig name.
Yeah, I mean it's.
There's a world to conquer.
There really is,
and we think like Americans.
And the thing is,
we should run a trade surplus.
There's a lot of, the U.S. is still the #1 market to grow a brand, though oddly enough, India consumes more whiskey than I think
Anywhere.
most of the planet.
But it's
combined.
pretty much cheap rot gut stuff.
Right. But it's amazing.
But imagine if you brought, it's an interesting idea. Imagine if you built a really great Indian whiskey brand for Indians, so they have to instead of aping their former imperial overlords, they had something great themselves.
Yeah, but don't you think it's just the disparity that such a wide gap or variance in income is why
you'd first sell to the rich Indians.
Rock gut stuff, and
you'd have to sell to the rich Indians to build an efficient operation so you could deliver better product at a low price point, right? You need a really efficient distillery if you were going to be competitive, and that's not really at the moment, my MO, right? Because we don't have those scale efficiencies. We need to focus on high quality, relatively high priced products because I can't compete with, the global operations.
I was just thinking that at the rate of success for WhistlePig, you could be the next William Grant.
Yep.
And then break out into at least other spirits, vodka, gins.
I like the way you think.
I'm just saying.
Marty's got a distillery he's trying to unload.
It's awfully nice. I love how you have different places around the farm.
Yeah.
You just sit and relax.
Yeah, it's a hangout
That's
spot.
my kind of farm.
This is where I do my, we do our deep strategy meetings to get off the
Is it really?
Grid a little bit, and because it almost feels like you're in a different spot altogether.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The terrain is different. You've got pines, and then there's a ledge, a 200-foot drop off down there, and there's a path behind here that takes me to my house.
And you get pickerel to climb up here?
Not unassisted.
How actually that brings up a good point.
What's the point?
Pickerel.
The pickerel.
How has pickerel been involved in WhistlePig?
Dave is my business partner. I couldn't have done it without him. I respect him a great deal, and he's integral to what's made the brand successful and an icon in the industry.
Yeah. For sure.
He's been a great, we were telling Andy yesterday, he's a great ambassador for you. I mean, he's at the shows, he's out in front of the table, he's working the crowd.
And he loves it.
Yeah, and he's very exuberant. And not only at shows, there's an event at Tales that was strictly industry. We all meet up at a bar, everybody brings a bottle of something. And there's...
Did he bring farm stock?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, oh, and he's brought some of the Boss Hog stuff too.
Did you guys get a taste of the Black Prince? Oh, you got it. We'll have a little toast with that
Oh, wow.
before the sun sets, as they say.
Sounds good. So Raj, how do you feel about Bernie Sanders?
And Donald Trump? Oh God, don't get me started.
Raj, I want to thank you for having us out to the farm.
It's been a delight, Will.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience.
Marty, cheers.
Cheers.
That's some good whiskey, huh?
Oh boy.